The workshop I'm running today, we're focusing on how to get new coders and first-time coders engaged in your hackathon. So hopefully this is something you're all interested in and care about. So I'll just start by introducing myself. So I'm Monique. I'm on the left. This is our giant bear at Hack Western. So I ran Hack Western 3 last year. It's at Western University in London, Ontario, so it's in Canada. It was our 3rd time running Hack Western, so we've had a few years. We're at about 500 people attending our event. And for me, the last time we ran it, we thought about like, what can we do differently? And so a lot of the stuff I'm going to share today is stuff we've learned throughout our time at Hack Western and stuff we've learned from other hackathons as well. So I was supposed to be presenting this workshop with my friend and my co-director, Kathy. Unfortunately, her flight couldn't take off from Toronto yesterday, so she didn't make it here. But this is our contact info. If you guys want to like tweet her and say you miss her or anything, there's her Twitter. So like feel free to spam her on Twitter because she's stuck in Toronto. Probably pretty sad. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us over Facebook or Twitter. You can also reach out through the Hack Western channels. If you have any questions, if you want to discuss anything I talk about today, if you just want to like be friends with Hack Western, we love meeting other hackathons, so that's cool too. So to give you some background on why I care so much about engaging first-time hackers, I'm actually not a computer science student. I've never taken a computer science class in my life. I've never studied engineering. I'm a business major, but that, I think, is something that like we shouldn't see stopping people from attending hackathons. I learned to program at hackathons. I've been to like, I've lost count, like maybe 15 MLH hackathons at this point. And I think hackathons are a really good starting point to learn to program. And so that's what I want to get in everyone's mind today and help you think about how can you get more first-time coders at your hackathon. So I think, who's seen someone ask them this question before? Like, I don't know how to code. Can I still come to your event? It's pretty common, right? And so Kathy and I, our answer is always yes, no matter what. They should come to your event. So we can see this in like a few different types of people. So you might have first-year computer science students they've taken like half of a computer science class, and they're like, I'm not ready. I can't come to a hackathon. So they might feel unconfident. They might not think they can come. You might have someone like me a few years ago. So I was studying economics. I'd like done some data analysis, and that was basically the extent of my programming knowledge. You might have someone in a completely different field who doesn't think about programming, but they think hackathons are cool, and that they think it might be something they want to go to. And we think all of these people should be welcome at your hackathon, and you should make an environment where they can succeed too. So I think hackathons are a really good way for people to learn for a few different reasons. First of all, it's not like school. Like, it's not like if they're taking a class and they could potentially fail the class. It's really risk-free. They can come, and the worst that can happen is like they waste their weekend and they find out they really don't care about it and they don't want to come to another one. Hopefully that's not the case. But it's really low risk for them. Hopefully your hackathons can provide them with a lot of resources for learning as well. And finally, like, there's other people that are learning. Just if you try to learn to code in your room by yourself, which like I have done, it's a lot less motivating than if you're sitting in a room with 500 other people who are also learning something. So I think that kind of environment is the perfect environment for someone to learn something new. So because of that, at Hack Western 3, we made our entire hackathon themed around learning. So we set a goal for ourselves that every single hacker out of 500 people who came to our hackathon, we wanted them to leave having shown that they learned at least one skill. So that could be like new hackers who didn't know how to program, and they could learn maybe like the basics of a language. But it also meant that we wanted the experienced hackers who had been to 10 hackathons before to learn something new at our hackathon as well. And because of this being our goal, it influenced a lot of the decisions we made and a lot of the tactics that I'm going to share with you during this workshop. So before we actually get started on like discussing how we can make this hackathon more inclusive to beginners, I want to play a bit of a game with you guys. Logistically, this might be a bit difficult, but ideally I'd like to get us in a circle with our chairs. So if everyone can help me, like, take the first few rows of chairs, and we need to be like musical chairs sense, so there can't be any extra chairs in the circle. Like, only take your own chair and try to form a circle and put the other chairs out of the way. This is a bit of a challenge, but let's try. Okay, so you might think like that was just my trick to get you guys standing. Kind of was. But the purpose of that activity was to show you, okay, you guys are probably viewed as like experienced in the community, or at least as organizers, people look up to you. But I want to show you that even everyone here has something to learn at a hackathon. Whether you've been to one hackathon, you've been to 10, there's something you haven't done before, and so you're new to something as well. And so we want to empathize with like what people who have never been to a hackathon before feel like, that it seems like people know everything, and like hackers have done, like programmed in every language, they know what they're doing, but we're all kind of in the same place and we all have something to learn. Okay, so what I want to do for the rest of this workshop is start by just going through some tactics you guys could potentially use to make your hackathon more inclusive for first-time coders. And so I've kind of got 4 categories of tactics, and we'll go through each of them. So eliminating barriers that might prevent first-time coders from coming to your hackathon or taking part. Equipping them with the skills they need, so making sure there's learning opportunities at your hackathon. Providing them support to make sure that they feel like they can continue to succeed at the hackathon, they don't give up halfway through, and they feel included. And then finally, celebrating learning as an actual successful point of your hackathon. So making it not just about the best hack, but also making it about learning as a priority. So to get started, one of the things I think we don't put a lot of thought into, other than just like using it as a way to weed out potential participants, is our application questions. I know a lot of hackathons, you might just have like a first come, first serve basis to give out tickets. Some hackathons will do applications if you have a lot of demand, but you're not able to have everyone attend. But think about when you're asking these questions to potential participants, you want to make sure it's as approachable as possible for someone who hasn't been to a hackathon before or who hasn't coded before as well. So we see common questions. When you guys are applying to hackathons, you probably see this, like, tell us about a project you made at a hackathon recently, or tell us what languages you program in, that kind of thing. But we want to think about questions that might show if someone's really curious and interested and passionate about coming to a hackathon, but they might not have the experience already. So at Hack Western, a couple of questions we asked on our last application, we asked someone, just tell us a story of you in 1 sentence. So that's something that they can tell us, like, I don't know, how did you get into programming? Why are you interested in programming? But also just like, what interesting stuff are you doing in your life that could benefit our event if you attend? Another question that we actually put a lot of emphasis on, we asked people, what's the one thing you want to learn this weekend? And so they, rather than coming with the mindset of like, oh, they asked me to list all my coding projects and I left the field blank, so like I'm obviously not getting in, I can't go. They can put a lot of passion to that question and say like, I have something I want to learn, and if they can demonstrate that to you, then they're actually probably a really good fit for your hackathon. Another important thing, and I think this has been talked about a lot of the diversity talks as well, is advertising your hackathon outside of just computer science and engineering. But this means you need to tailor your messaging as well. So if you just tell people in majors outside of these, like, come to a hackathon, they might not know what it is, they might not think they're qualified. So maybe showing other people who have been to a hackathon and been successful who weren't in computer science, or tailoring the message to something they might be interested in. So for example, at Western, we have a very large medical sciences program, and that's something we want to engage in the hackathon. So we might tailor messaging such as, how can you help patients through an app, or like that kind of stuff that would get them interested because it's related to their field, but they realize they can also like demonstrate those skills at the hackathon. So this is just an example of a project we saw at Hack Western. So StudyLink was built by 4 students who were studying biomedical sciences and bioinformatics. So they came to the hackathon. None of them had programmed before. And they attended a workshop we did. One of our sponsors ran a design thinking workshop. And the focus was thinking about the problems you face in your everyday life and how can you build products to solve those problems. And so with that workshop, they decided that they were having a lot of trouble forming study groups. They weren't able to find study spaces or people to study with. And so they did a mock-up and actually decided to build a web app to help them form study groups. And so they were able to get to a working stage to demo at the end of the hackathon. And it showed them that even though they're not studying like how to program, they could learn the simple steps and get a minimum working product that they could be proud of, and also something that would directly allow them to solve a problem in their own lives. So it was really relevant to them. So another of the big barriers I think we don't really consider in hackathons is how hard it is to set up your development environment. So like this is an actual thing. Hackathon developer gets development environment working with 2 hours to go. Like this has happened to me before. I don't know about you guys, but you can spend so much time just like trying to set up Node or something like that you never actually have time to hack. And especially if you've never done that before, that can be a huge barrier. I know at my first hackathon ever, I spent 6 hours trying to get like the dev environment set up. I let someone just take my computer and do it, and like thinking back now, I probably shouldn't have done that, but you just get so frustrated. You're like, I don't even want to try building something. I can't even get the program to run on my computer. This has also happened to me at Hackathon. This is a screenshot from my own Snapchat. So I was trying to install Postgres, which is like similar to MongoDB. It's like for managing databases. And it literally made another user on my computer. So I have like my user account and somehow a Postgres user account. It's like stuff like that happens to us even if we're experienced hackers. So you can imagine how hard it is for someone who's never coded and then they have to set all this up. And so that's why I think one of the important things that we should be doing in hackathons is thinking how can we eliminate that barrier for new people. Something as simple as having a workshop in the first evening, maybe right after opening ceremonies, to get people set up. For example, if they say, like, I want to build a web app, spend 30 minutes as a group just like installing stuff, having people to help them if the installation doesn't work. If you can get that sorted out, they're a lot more likely to actually go on to the fun stuff, which is building some kind of product. And then the final thing I want to talk about in terms of eliminating barriers is team formation. It's also really difficult if you show up to a hackathon, you've never been to a hackathon, and you can't find anyone on your team, or you think, like, I can't even come if I don't have a team. So this is something I think we've talked about in other sessions as well. You guys probably have a good idea about. But it's thinking, like, how can you make team formation more inclusive? Maybe incentivizing experienced hackers in some way to have new hackers join their team. You could do something like, we've given out prizes before for best team that included beginners. So the whole team doesn't have to be made up of beginners, but maybe if they include 1 or 2 beginners on their team, they qualify for that prize category. And I guess MLH announced today that they're hosting team formation workshops as part of their offering to you as well as MLH member events. So I think that's something to take advantage of, and specifically talk to your coaches about how can you make team formation more welcoming for first-time coders at your hackathon. And so to give you another story about that, so I talked to one of the hackers who was at Hackwestern 3. His name's David. And he's actually a financial engineering student, so he doesn't do a lot of programming outside of like analytics type stuff in his day-to-day education. But at his first hackathon, he was a new hacker, but he got paired with a team of experienced hackers. And he actually found it to be a really great learning experience. He's gone on to focus on making VR and AR products at hackathons, and he's actually managed to win a few hackathons. So it shows you like what having a good first experience can do to get someone engaged in the community. But it's really important to have that support around you, and having an experienced team can help with that. All right, so moving on to the second topic, equipping hackers with skills. So introductory workshops, I think a lot of people think about these, but we might run introductory workshops that are like intro to AWS, or I don't know, how to set up like your first iOS app kind of thing. But we don't realize, again, that those can be, they seem like intro workshops to us, but if you've never seen like what a server is and then someone tries to tell you how to set up AWS, it can be like kind of scary as well. So thinking about the kind of workshops that would be really rewarding immediately for a first-time coder. So something as simple as like setting up a website. So MLH, again, has local host packages such as building your first website that would be really useful for a first-time coder. We ran an intro to HTML workshop before Hackwestern, and we had a lot of students come in that were from like social science majors, and they managed to leave by the end of the night with like a website that displayed their name, their photo, their education, some information about themselves. And them seeing like, oh, I can just type a few lines of code and like change the background color, or like make the text different. That shows them like pretty quickly they can get involved with programming something and make something out of it. So something like that is pretty rewarding for them. And so we also run what we call 0 to Hero workshops before Hackwestern. And this is something you can consider doing in your campus community. So we do stuff like how to use GitHub, or like how to program a small robot. Very simple things that you can actually see results with immediately, so that it's exciting and people want to keep learning more. So this is another story of a hacker at Hackwestern. So Katie is actually a psychology major. She attended Hackwestern too because her friends like dragged her there. They were like, we're going to Hackathon, you should come as well. And she told me she spent the entire first hackathon she went to at Hackwestern 2 on Code Academy. So she didn't end up submitting a hack, she didn't end up working in a team, but just being in an environment of other people coding around you is incentive to actually spend like 20 hours straight on Code Academy, and you can learn a lot in 20 hours. And so encouraging hackers to notice like it doesn't always have to be about building some fancy product, but if you can demonstrate that you learned something, and like you tried something you wouldn't normally do in class, that can also be beneficial for them. And so I think it's important for us to recognize that as organizers. And this is really beneficial for Katie. So she went on to take computer science classes after that because she actually really enjoyed working on programming that weekend. And she went to work at a startup the next summer. And she came back to Hackwestern 3 as her second hackathon and finished an app and actually submitted and presented an app with her team. So these are the kind of stories we want to see more at hackathons, is people studying stuff like psychology or medical sciences and coming to your hackathons, using it as a learning platform and getting started into the technology community. And then one more thing I think has been interesting. How many of you guys have seen like code starter packs of some sort at hackathons? I think they're like starting to get more popular. So I think they were started initially by Unhackathon, but I've seen them at a few hackathons now. So Tree Hacks has great like hack packs, they're called. And it's basically starter code that's like, here's the base code to build your first iOS app or your first website. You can download the code, like fork it off GitHub, and basically you start running it and it's like hello world, and then you can start modifying it and like putting your own information in or customizing stuff. But you're already at the starting point of like an app shows up on your computer, which getting there can sometimes be a big barrier for people because like the weight of like, okay, I don't know what's going on, nothing's happening, and then they get frustrated. So having a starting point can be really helpful for hackers. And this is something a lot of beginner hackers have told me they want to see at hackathons as well. Okay, moving on to providing support. So I think we could like run a whole workshop on mentorship. That's like a pretty big topic, so I won't talk about it too much. But I think just like keep it top of mind for your hackathon. You can have mentors in the form of like sponsors bringing engineers. I think that's always really beneficial. Like if you're recruiting sponsors, don't just talk about how much money they can bring. I know that's like really important, but also how many engineers can they bring that can help your hackers? And are there engineers willing to like stay overnight or stay for the whole day? Because what they don't realize, like what we tell our sponsors is, okay, you're getting like all the benefits we give you, right? Like you're getting the resumes, you're getting your logo on the t-shirt. But the sponsors that get the most out of the hackathon are the ones that like probably didn't have a very high sponsorship tier, but brought this like super energetic engineer that stayed up all night, because at like 4 a.m., no other company is there. So you have the full spotlight, right? So try to sell your sponsors on that so that they bring more mentors to your event, because that's only going to help your hackers, and that's ultimately what you're trying to do. Also think about getting students as mentors. So I know there are some hackathons now. I think CalHacks had like a student mentorship program. Penn Apps had their gurus. So you can actually allow students who maybe have been to so many hackathons, they're like, okay, I'm like getting over this. They might want to come and mentor other people as well. And so you can allow people to apply and come to your hackathon just as mentors. And the other thing you can consider is meetups. So I think a lot of hackathons, you can have stuff like high school hacker meetups. Ladies Storm Hackathons is another group for female hackers to meet up. And these are spaces where if people are new to coding, they can see other people like themselves, maybe meet people to form a team. And it's usually a good environment for them if they're just getting started as well. So just another example from Hackwestern. So we had a team of 4 high school students who came. They met because they were all high school students, so they like met at a meetup. They decided to form a team. They made a banking app that basically tracks like both financial and the environmental returns. So they had never made a full app before. They had taken like 1 CS class maybe in high school. But they were able to get to the point at the end of the weekend where they actually made an app that used HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So that kind of experience, again, something positive. By having other people like themselves, they're able to work together and get a good experience that'll make them come back to more hackathons. Okay, and then last one before we start talking. So one thing we did on our judging criteria last year was actually include learning as a judging criteria. So When you guys set up your judging and you have sponsors come judge prizes, you might look at things like technical difficulty or like the quality of the idea. We actually included learning as one of those criteria, and we said if you don't write on your dev post or tell a judge in person what you learned, you're not even going to be considered for like top 6. That was actually one of the biggest criteria, and the teams that got to present in the top 6 at the final closing ceremonies had to really be focused on not only did we build something cool, but we learned something entirely new while doing it. Like if a judge came up to you and was like, oh, what did you learn here? And you had just done stuff you had already done before, we didn't really view that as valuable. We thought it was important that everyone was in there as a learning experience so that new people, experienced people, everyone was kind of in the same area, having the same experience. We also did a lot of stuff to encourage everyone to demo. How many people here have like seen or like been to a hackathon and maybe your project at the end, you're like, this isn't great, I'm probably not going to bother demoing, and just like went to see other projects? I've done that for sure. But our goal was like, because we wanted everyone to show that they're learning something, we also wanted everyone to demo their projects. So the first thing we did, we gave out a prize for the best dev post that was up 10 hours before the submission deadline. So on dev post, you can like create a post and then edit it after. But basically, we told people, okay, at midnight on the Saturday night, I went on DevPost and I read all the submissions so far, and I picked one that was like really exemplifying learning and we thought was good, and we awarded them a prize. But what this did was made sure that everyone who had any potential possibility of finishing something did their DevPost already, because like it was a free chance at a prize. And a lot of these people might not have demoed in the end if they like didn't get to the stage they wanted to be at. But now, because they already had a DevPost, they were already submitted in the final fair. And so they were like, okay, I might as well just demo. So we got a lot more people who are demoing projects that might not have been perfect, but they were able to show something that they built, and they were able to show something they learned as well. The other thing we did was we gave a Google Cardboard to every team member who demoed. We happen to have like a big supply of Google Cardboards donated, but if you have any sponsors that donate like small swag items that you might not have enough to give everyone, or you just want to like limit it a bit, that's a good idea. We did it as a surprise, so I'm not sure if it like incentivized people, but it was a nice, like, we're acknowledging the fact that you took the courage to come up and tell us about your project. And it encourages people like going forward as well. They see, okay, I'm not sure if my project is perfect, but like, hey, if I stand up and say something for 10 minutes, I'm gonna get a Google Cardboard, so like I might as well just demo, which I think is a pretty positive thing. It's a good experience to have demoed a project. And then one of the last things, so we also included prizes that were focused less so on how good your project was, and more so just on what did you learn here. So we gave a prize for the best fail project. So this was a project that they tried something difficult, they tried to learn something new. They didn't end up finishing, but they like put their effort in, and we saw that they actually like learned something out of it. So I think the team we ended up awarding this prize to, they tried to build a sign language interpreter so that you could like use sign language in front of a video camera, and it would interpret it and then like say it out loud for someone who didn't know sign language. And they didn't get anything working by the end. Like it was like they literally wrote on their dev post, "We tried," but the point was that they learned a lot in the process, and like they did try. And so we want to encourage people that like that's okay. You can come to a hackathon, especially if it's your first time, and just try something, and it's like a good experience as well. I think it's also like pretty common to see prizes for best newcomers, best first-time hackers. That's something you should also consider if your hackathon isn't doing it yet. So one quick thing I want to talk about before we'll have a bit of a group discussion is how do you measure the success of some of these things? If you're getting first-time coders to your hackathon, how do you know if they're actually feeling included? One thing you can do is look at the stats of just like the people attending your hackathon. So at Hack Western, we usually have around a 50% split. I think that's like pretty similar to MLH. 50% of people are new hackers at our hackathon. That's something we try to keep consistent because we think it's pretty important. But you might also want to look at, of those new hackers, what percentage of them actually went on to demo a project or stayed for the whole weekend. And that's how you can measure your success. The other thing that's really valuable is hacker feedback surveys. So MLH does one, but you could consider doing one for your hackathon as well. Asking people, for example, what did you learn at this hackathon? What kind of things helped you learn what you did, or is there something else that could be more helpful? And this all allows you to measure if you're actually doing a good job or if there's something you can improve the next year. So I'll check how much time we have left, but what I want you guys to do now is if you're here with other people from your hackathon, you can work together. If you're just the only one from your hackathon, you can work by yourself for a bit. But just grab a piece of paper and jot down maybe like 5 to 10 ideas of what you're going to do specifically at your hackathon to start engaging more first-time coders. Make yourself a mini plan. Okay, I'm just going to wrap things up because people are going to come into the room for the next workshop. But please keep discussing this with your teams. I also want to hear some of the tactics you guys have come up with because the ones I've put up are ones that we've used before or I've seen, but I think there's a lot more out there that I was missing. So if you see me around for the rest of the weekend, like come up and tell me what the best ideas were in your group or tweet them at us at HackWestern. Thanks so much, guys. And if you have any questions, like I'll be here, so you can just come talk to me.